welcome to this amazing webinar that we've put together for you on Church Building Design 101. My name is Dave Milam, and this is where you're sitting.
Danae Doherty.
Is that how you say your last name?
Yes, and all these years you've been getting it wrong.
I just never say your last name. Say it again.
Doherty.
Doherty, okay. I still feel like I'm saying it wrong when I say it that way. Well, I'm glad you're here. Before we get started, I'm moving, is that okay? Our camera, we're gonna make the camera guy mad. We got this cold brew vanilla coffee, 0 sugar, right here. And you have your product placement. I've got Stumptown because I only had one of those mugs. But we're gonna give this a try. Let me see, I'll put my mic up close. Yes, you like that? And then here, I'll pour you first because I'm a nice guy.
Thank you.
Tell me if it's good or not. This is almost as if we need more caffeine right now, right?
It's good, it's
Is
good.
it good?
I like it, yeah.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna be super analog today. And because a lot of times on these webinars, it's just straight, somebody prepared a PowerPoint and you're rolling through it. Not here today, it's gonna be messy.
As it already is.
Thank you very much. And we're just gonna go for it. Hey, Danae, I've got this thing of markers. Go ahead and grab that. And got this paper. And I'm gonna clean this up a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm taking out all the markers because I like options.
Yeah, you do. All right, I'm gonna unroll it that way. Is that good?
Yep.
Here it comes.
Oh.
I got some tape here. Yeah, keep it like on the roll in case we completely screw this up and we need some extra room.
How about this?
Yeah, I guess that'll work.
You want tape?
No, that'll be fine.
Okay,
That's
all
good.
right.
So probably you're joining this webinar because you're in the spot where you're trying to figure out this whole building design thing. Because if you're like most pastors, they didn't teach this in seminary. And so you're just stumbling along trying to figure this out. Are we ready to get started? What color should we start with?
I think we're ready, and so I'm gonna go with turquoise. That's one of my all-time favorites, and that's where we're gonna start.
Okay, go for it. Are you gonna start? Do you
No,
know what we're
you're
doing?
gonna start. I thought you were gonna
No, I'll do it,
start.
I'll do it,
Okay,
I'll do
you
it.
do it.
Here's where I'm gonna start right up here. And this might be tricky, but we'll start right up here like this. I'm gonna be fancy,
Okay.
all right? See that fanciness happening?
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the whole 3D banner and everything.
No, it's just like clip art,
I
right?
know that. I was gonna say you took the words right out of my mouth.
See that word right there? That's the word we have to remember for this whole thing, is the word adventure. Because for most pastors, this is a scary process.
Yeah.
But if you think about any adventure that you're going on, you definitely have to keep in mind all of these details, because in any major adventure, like rock climbing or even whitewater rafting,
Yep.
you could totally die if you do it wrong.
Yep.
So there's that. So anytime you start an adventure, before you even get on site, there are a bunch of things that you need to do and get ready. So before you even start on this adventure of building church building, there are also things that need to happen, right?
Yep.
Give me another color. We should use this one again?
No, we gotta change it up. Let's go with
give
the
me a
pink.
thicker marker.
You want thick? Okay. Then let's go with the red.
Red.
Close enough to
Scary.
pink.
So when you start thinking about a church building, this is what you've got to look at. I'll let you speak to this because we're going to call this, it's like a gun scope. So this is like your scope, and this is going to be like a calendar, and this over here will be, we'll call this budget. I'll put scope here. And here I'll put schedule. Anytime we start a project, it's super critical that all of these areas have complete alignment with one another. Danae, I've got to ask you, have there been any projects that you have done where these have not been in alignment?
Well, to be honest with you, that's almost every project, and that's why we're talking about this now. But For us, we like to help people who are new to this process understand how to align these things in order to make the experience as successful and straightforward for them as possible.
Yeah, but when you say every project doesn't have alignment, at some point there's a little bit,
and
right?
So that's kind of the point, is oftentimes when people are coming in, pastors are coming in, they want to talk about their project, and they might kind of know what the scope is, or they may have an idea
Explain
of
what scope is.
So let me back up. So the scope is all about, like, what is the project? What are we going to do here? What do we need? What do we want? And sometimes we need to help align the needs and wants to a place that also considers what the budget could be, how much do we want to spend on this project, and then also what's the schedule? When is the ideal time frame that we'd like to see it completed? And so the key is that we hope to bring alignment and help find alignment between these three items, because oftentimes when we're first starting to talk about a project, there might be two in alignment and one that we just don't know. We have no idea what should we even consider to be the budget. We have no idea of how much what we want and what we need costs.
So here's an example of something that's not in alignment. And we've seen this before.
Yeah.
Someone will come to us and say, we want a gym, a lobby, a 10,000 seat worship auditorium.
Yes.
And we have $1 million to do it.
Yes.
As good as you might be, there's just not alignment there.
Yes.
Right? There has to be at some point alignment between how much you want to spend and what you want to build. Now, this is where the third thing comes in, because honestly, it doesn't matter how much you want to spend or what you want to build. You can typically get there over a period of time.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And we say, what's feasible?
It's feasible.
Yeah, that was really cheesy how that just happened. So our process, like we call this, we have a name for this in the visioneering world, but it's super important that you know that at the very beginning of every project, you need to make sure that there is this alignment between budget, scope, and schedule. We call it, in our world, we call it our field guide. And so we have a whole thing where we literally just help a church figure this out. What should I build? How much should I spend? What's too much?
Yep.
Because a lot of times churches bite off more they can chew and then end up having to fire people as soon as they move in.
And the other thing that can happen is you may be having a gut reaction to a need that you need filled. You're like, man, we have this challenge and we just absolutely have to solve it. And we might overcorrect or overswing the pendulum in a way that you are trying to oversolve the problem or maybe spend more than you need. And it just takes a fresh set of eyes to be able to look at it and walk you through it to figure out, like, what can we do with what we already have and make it work better for us, rather than spending a ton more money on extra stuff maybe that we don't need.
We were in a church this past weekend that they were a growing church, but they didn't have enough bathrooms, so they had porta potties for bathrooms.
Yep.
So at the beginning of each service, they actually stood up and said, we've got 2 actual restrooms. They're for the women. The porta potties are outside for the men.
Yep.
And that's how they announced. So when we were looking at their new space, it was like,
bathrooms for everybody.
it was like, let's do 10,000 bathrooms. And so the tendency is to overcorrect.
It's always to overcorrect, and that's where we can help really bring it back down a notch and say, look, let's just really make sure that what we're building is what we actually need. Let's not overbuild, and let's not spend more than we need to, and still be able to really solve the problem.
Yeah, so when you're on the adventure, before you start anything, make sure that these 3 are in alignment. And you may need some help to do that.
Yep.
But this is super critical. In our world, honestly, we won't even hit pen to paper until we've locked in what the budget is and we've locked in what the scope is. If the church isn't clear on the budget, I mean, we can easily draw a $50 million building.
Easily. Easily.
That would be fun. There aren't a lot of churches who will pay that. So what we want to do is we want to draw something that matches the budget.
Yes.
It's super easy to blue sky all day and dream, but at some point you've got to come down and actually hit budget, and that's what we're super important.
And our goal is not to design something that just stays in the paper phase. We want to dream, but we want to dream in a way that we can actually have an end result that's going to serve the needs of the church.
And that's what churches want too.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the next part, okay?
Okay.
So give me another color. We're going to be like colorful.
All right,
here.
Let's see. Well, do you want a fat
I want
marker
a fat
again?
marker,
Okay, then we'll go with the blue one.
The blue one, okay. So the next phase, so after this is paper, this is not even sexy, right? But you got to figure out this stuff. But the next phase is super fun stuff, right? But the next phase is super fun. Basically, what we call this, I'm going to write up here. This is kind of basically what we call this. I'm going to write up here. This is kind of, we'll call it concept design. In our world, because concept design. In our world,
do
you want to we kind of live in this adventure space. Do you want to do it in blue?
Well, yeah, I'll do it with blue. Okay.
We're switching sides. I'm taking my coffee with me, though.
Am I inside the arrow or outside the arrow?
Inside the arrow.
Okay, all right. Base camp. So here we are at base camp.
Explain all about what that is.
Okay, so once we have figured out, we've got our field guide and we've got some parameters and we know, what we're trying to work with in terms of scope and budget and potential schedule, then we go to what we call as our base camp, and this is all about the dreaming stage. This is where we try to capture the vision and the culture and the spirit of the church and translate that into a three-dimensional project that's going to just sing and really illustrate who the church is and who the unique people they are serving are.
So for the pastor, this is like when you do your fundraising campaign, these are those images that you show.
Yep,
right?
Exactly.
We haven't actually started the blueprint design. This is the 3D, we're dreaming, this is what we're going to build design, right?
Exactly. And the great thing about this is we allow ourselves the space and the freedom to dream a little bit outside of the box, but we're always, as your team, thinking behind the scenes, okay, we know we still have to consider this too.
Right.
So we're trying to run the dreaming phase through the lens of also making sure it's incredibly feasible and fits within a realistic budget that we've already assessed early on. But this is the place where we get to come up with the amazing concept, the amazing images that you're going to be able to use for a campaign to sell and to share the vision with those around you.
You should have some more caffeine.
Like I don't have enough caffeine already.
Do you need a back shot of this? Yeah, so the important thing is really no matter who you use to design your space or even to construct it, you need to do this pre-work, this discovery phase at the very beginning to determine budget, scope, and schedule. When that's not determined, the project always goes haywire.
Yes, always.
100% of the time.
And it's usually right here because we're dreaming and we're dreaming and we're dreaming, and the dream never gets out of the dream phase.
Right.
It ends up just kind of spiraling here because none of these things have been considered in order to help this be a dream and be a vision, but also get into a place where it can be real.
Right. So now this is the spot where you create the beautiful images. Now, because we have done this so much, we've discovered, I'm using the red. Here's the blue. Do you want to cap that or no?
Why, you're trying to take the pen out of my hand?
No, I'm just writing something
All right,
awesome here.
okay. It's almost like you've done this before.
Once or twice.
Okay.
I'll do it here. Revenge. There is, in any adventure, there are hazards. I remember when I was whitewater rafting, I was going down the river with my family, and the guide was like, he tries to scare you, I think.
Yeah.
He says, this next rapid is like Hell's Fury, and 20 people have died here in the past year. And you freak out. They have crazy names, but we have named this hazard in our adventure of designing and building a church, Limbo's Revenge. I can't tell you how many churches I've been in where I see these beautiful 3D imageries leaning up against the wall, never built.
Yep.
And typically what happens is people hang out in this limbo's revenge, this space between do we build, do we not build, what's the next step? They'll design the beautiful images, but taking the next step is really big.
Yeah.
It's really
Very.
big. And what we've discovered is because when you don't have this figured out, this limbo's revenge will eat you alive. Right? Yep.
You never move forward, you never get out of it.
It's true. All right, let's actually go to the design phase, because here's where things start getting a little tricky. Now, at this point, once you have concept designs and you're ready to move on, you've got budget and scope alignment, you've got a date on the calendar, you've got all of those things worked out. There's a huge decision that needs to be made right here. I'm gonna put an X. Big decision that needs to be made right there. Do you know what that decision? I bet you don't know what it is. The question is, do we do design build or we do design bid build? That has to be answered right there, right?
It has to be answered right there, yes.
Tell me why that has to be answered right there.
Okay, so here's the thing. The whole benefit of design build is getting the contractor, the church or owner, and the designer all in alignment as early as possible into the process. And the reason that's a great option, especially for churches, is because it's almost like a turnkey one-stop shop solution where the whole team is integrated. They understand from the beginning the goals of the project, including these critical items that were decided way up here in the field guide. So everyone is on board, they know what the goal is, and they're all working together to make sure that the project is successful from a vision standpoint, but also from a scope, schedule, and budget standpoint. So that's really the benefit of design build, is that you have a cohesive team working together from the beginning, making sure that the project goals are met.
Yeah, the traditional way is to do design, bid, build. And it's kind of like, that's the order. You design the project, then you really honestly don't know how much it's gonna cost until you bid it. And then everybody kind of goes, oh, it's too much, or it's not, you don't know. And then you build it. And the tricky thing is when it's being built, the architect and the construction guys and the owners, they all have their own lawyers. And if there's anything that goes haywire, it just gets...
It can spiral out of
it gets
control
messy
really quickly. Yeah.
So when we do design build, here's the really cool thing. I'm gonna use green.
Okay.
Right here at this, we go ahead and do our best to lock in a budget right here, okay? But at the end of this, and here's what I've learned. Like I've been a pastor for a while, but what I've learned about this process is, I hope I don't offend anybody, but designers, I hope I don't offend you, are a whole lot like worship pastors. They're super creative.
Super stylish?
Sometimes. They don't wear skinny jeans all the time, but they're super creative, but you don't want them running the church's books.
That's a fair statement,
That's
I
fair.
suppose. Yeah.
However, the construction dudes, man, they love Excel. They sleep with their shock drawer organized, and they know the rising price of steel today. So they're the best person who's going to create a budget for your project.
Yep.
So we bring in, with design build, we bring our construction person in at the very beginning to prepare a budget, and then right here at concept stage, we actually put together another projection of what this thing's gonna cost, right there, right? And then we go into this stage. What color? I'm gonna go gray.
Okay.
Is that good? This stage, and I'm gonna call this, what should I call that? SD?
Schematic design, unless you're going to break it up, or if you're going to do all design together.
Yeah,
then just...
we'll do schematic design.
Okay.
In the architect world, listen, architects love themselves some acronyms like Baptist did in the 80s.
Yes, we love it. We can't get enough of them.
Oh my goodness. They call this SD. Here, you write schematic design, because I'll probably
You don't know how to spell it? I got it.
This is like on video, so I'm nervous that I might
Oh, great. Now I misspelled it. You set me up for that. Okay, well, we'll cross that out and I'll start over.
You could have put a C in there.
I don't think it would have fit, and I wouldn't have liked the way it looked, so I'll just start over.
And you like the Xing out the SH better. Totally
For
get it.
this purpose, I get it.
All right, we got some white out somewhere.
Okay.
So this is schematic design. Schematic design is basically the part of design where they're laying out the floor plan, right? The heavy lifting happens here, right? This is like the major part of design when you're designing a building that's super, super critical.
Yes, almost all of the decisions related to design is going to happen in this phase right here, schematic design.
Yeah, so at the end of schematic design, so this is about a 3 to 4 month phase depending on the size of the project.
Yes.
Smaller projects can be less, larger projects, it could potentially be more. At the end of this phase, when you do design build, we do another budget.
Oh my gosh, if you're the executive pastor, you're loving this right now because you've already gotten 3 Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah. So right here, we're actually putting numbers to what it's going to cost. And actually, the fluctuation from this place to this place tends to be the biggest.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so this number and this number likely will match. We hope they will, but this is where the fluctuation would be the biggest.
Yep.
Just so you know, there's another hazard that goes right here. There's a bunch of hazards. We'll talk, should I share this one?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, this one, I love this one. This one's called Haggler's Divide. Why is it called Haggler's Divide, Danae?
Because this is going to be the point where the things you really want and the things you really need are going to be on the table and up for discussion to decide which of these things do we actually move forward with. And it all comes back to budget. And it's just a place where, because the budget can fluctuate over time because of just the conditions of the market and other things that are part of doing a construction project, there may be a point where we have to actually go back and make some decisions about maybe fine-tuning the design and tuning it up to make sure that it's still staying within the number that we determined way back here.
Right. Yeah, this is the point where we go, oh, it costs a little bit more than we thought it would, and then we just haggle and we figure it out.
Exactly.
It's actually kind of a review back to this. If we've done our job really well, then there's a match between budget and scope, and there still continues to be a match between budget and scope.
Exactly.
I think we're going to run out of space, but we'll just keep on going. I'm going to move this over a little
Okay.
bit. The next part is we're going to call, what color? I'm not going to do red. I'm going to do black.
Okay.
The next part is called, I'm going to combine DD and CD.
That's fine.
See,
Yeah.
see what I mean about the acronyms? Love.
We'll tell you what they are in a second.
Oh my goodness, acronyms. You write all that business. I'm switching sides with you right now.
Okay, well, I'll try to get it right the first time on this one. So we've basically combined design development, which we call DDs, and construction documents, which is CDs. So design development, and these are really long words.
You spelled it. You're spelling it right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix that.
You're fine.
Maybe I'll spell this one wrong. I'm going to shorten this, but just know that these are construction documents, and oftentimes we might refer to them as condocs or construction docs, just to shorten it. So when we can't get down all the way to the acronym, which is CDs.
So from a practical standpoint, as a pastor, this is the part of the design where we're creating the floor plan. But right about in here, we start bringing in the interior designer. And this is where things happen, like we're picking out the carpet.
Yes.
And we know what light fixtures are going to be.
Yep.
And it really brings in, and so guess what happens here? We do another bid projection. We do another budget to find out how much it's going to cost, right? This is the design build process. And then another one right here, right?
Yep, we're pretty much, as you're starting to see the trend here, is everything we're doing, we're going back and running it through the lens of what did we determine up here when we did the feasibility. So what can happen in, Dave alluded to it, a bid build projection is you're not finding any of this out until you're off the paper over here somewhere else. And by that time, if you need to make a correction or we need to tune something up, you've got to come really far backwards to make the correction rather than, taking these intermediate steps that make it really easy to tune something up if it needs to be.
Yeah, it's super easy to make corrections as you go. If the budget starts to go, or the projection starts to get a little high, to bring it back down.
Yeah.
It's way easier to do that than wait until you submit it to bid and then you have a moment.
Yep.
Right? You don't want that.
Yeah. In fact, we've been called in more times than I can count to try to salvage a situation like that.
Right.
So.
All right. So the good news is right after this is you draw the next part. I'm gonna move this thing.
All right.
We're gonna run out of table.
We're gonna run out of table, but that's okay. Should I do this one in red? Maybe we just repeat.
Oh, do black again.
Do black?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So here we are after DDs and CDs, and this is a really cool phase here. So right between DDs and CDs, this part here, which I'm going to where's the green? We're using green for money, so we might as well just stay with that. So what ends up happening here is this bid projection, it goes from being a bid projection to being what we call a GMP, guaranteed maximum price. And at that point, it's no longer a bid projection, it's no longer a budget, it is a guaranteed cost for the work. And once we lock that in, We guarantee that anything that we designed up to this point is going to be that cost, and it will not change unless, of course, you want to add a second wing to the kids' building that wasn't part of this original design.
Now, let me stop you for a second, because this is a little weird. When you say guaranteed, what does that mean? So if the project goes over budget, what happens?
So for Visioneering, when we do a design build project and we lock in a GMP, which is the guaranteed maximum price, we guarantee that the cost of the work that we agreed on up to this point will not exceed that dollar amount. If it does, and this is the cool thing if you're the pastor and you're the church, if it exceeds that dollar amount, guess who has to pay for it? Not you guys.
That's right.
So it ends up being Visioneering and our team who we make sure that we made a promise here that we could do that work for this amount, and if it goes over that amount, we end up figuring out how to make it work.
Yeah, and so this part, let me switch spots with
Okay.
you. This part right here is where we just start to, build. I'm gonna do the green again. Like this is the, and obviously, this isn't the scale. We'll talk timelines in a second. Let me tell you logistically from a design build perspective what happens in this spot. This is the spot where we actually send the project out. We go 3 and 4 deep to the local guys. So there'll be like 3 or 4 bids to the drywall guy, 3 or 4 bids to the plumbing guy, right? That's just how it goes down. We bring in all those bids, we choose who's gonna win the project, we add it up, we add percentages on, and then bam, you have a guaranteed maximum price. And that's completely transparent process. As much as you want to be involved, you can be involved in that. From a timeline perspective, this build, we didn't do it to scale. Did you notice that?
That's true, we didn't. Actually, that box should be about 4 times bigger than it is, or at least longer.
Yeah, traditionally, that first, can you write some numbers on this?
Sure.
Use the blue.
Yeah, I'll use the blue.
The field guide process for us typically takes about 6 to 9 weeks. So a couple months, right? The base camp process for us is about 6 weeks to a month. 6 weeks to...
Let's just call it 6 weeks. That's pretty average.
Okay, okay. This process is about 3 months. And each of these is also about 3 months.
Yep, so that's 3 and 3.
3 and 3.
Yep.
And this, depending on the size, is...
So this is where you're going to have the most fluctuation in the schedule, and it could be anywhere from 6 months for a renovation to, let's call it 18 months for a ground up new construction of a worship center of plus or minus 2,000 seats.
Right, right. And so that from the very beginning, basically from the moment you're dreaming about the project to the moment, right, ribbon cutting up there. Do red because it's like a danger.
Should I make like a ribbon in 3D?
Will you do
like
it?
Like your ribbon?
Do it, I want to see it happen.
I don't have as much space, so maybe.
That's a cop out. Just throw it on the floor.
Okay,
Roll it on the floor.
All right, it's going. Okay, so here's, I don't know if I can do the 3D ribbon, but let's.
You're doing like a ribbon around the tree kind of thing.
I saw a bunch of them here when I was driving over, so that's what I'm doing. There you go, ribbon cutting.
So right ribbon cutting right there.
Okay.
Now, because you signed on to this webinar because you really wanted to kind of know the design process, just so you know, from here all the way to here, if you're doing design, bid, build, everything's the same, okay? You still need to get your discovery done. You still need to have your concept drawings, SD, DD, CD. There's permitting that happens in here, but at this point, that's the point that you would send a project out to bid to contractors to bid the whole thing. And the only thing that would also be different is typically if you're doing design, bid, build, you would not get these budget numbers all across. It's just a crapshoot.
Yep, it is.
Yeah, you're having your architects.
Usually what happens is the architect has taken on the responsibility of determining what an approximate bid or budget for the project could be. And in general, the person who's going to put it in place, the contractor who is most familiar with the market and market trends and subcontractors, is going to be best equipped to really tell you what that's going to be rather than the architect.
Hey, let me just give some bonus material real quickly, and then we'll wrap it up. Sometimes when churches are trying to figure out their budget, let me just give you some rules of thumb that we see that might help you. If a church is doing a capital campaign to help build a project, if you do the capital campaign by yourself, that means you don't use a consultant. Like you do the traditional, we're doing the vision night, we're doing a sermon series, and we do a big commitment Sunday, then you are likely to get 1 time your annual giving. So whatever your annual giving is, multiply it by 1 over a 2-year period, that's what you'll likely get. If you use a consultant, then typically what we see is that you will get anywhere from 2 to 2.5 times your annual giving, okay? And we see this it's crazy. Like the churches, this is so consistent, who do it by themselves, 1 times your annual giving. The ones who do it, use a capital campaign consultant 2 to 2.5 times. Really pretty consistently. So Danae, tell me, when is the best place, in your opinion, to do a capital campaign?
So the best place to do the campaign is always going to be right here after schematic design at this budget projection here. The reason being is that at the end of schematic design, that's when we're going to have the most realistic projections. So we're going to start to get a really good feel related to any swings that might happen to the budgeting. And it's so important and critical that the message and the vision that's communicated in a campaign aligns pretty closely to what the actual plan is for the building, because we all know if we go out, too early and something changes, it's really hard to walk that back.
Yeah, we want to protect the leadership capital. When you stand up in front of the church and say, this is what it's going to cost, we want that to be the case.
Yes, exactly.
So we want you to wait until this bid projection before you stand up and say, this is the image, this is what it's going to cost. Plus, there's a lot of design work that happens between here and here.
There really is, yeah.
So you don't want to show these concept images that actually end up being different than what you end up building.
Yep.
Right? Awesome. Is there anything else you can think of that we need to cover?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
I would just say that the design process can be kind of messy, but that's what makes it cool. There's a lot.
Because it's an adventure.
It's an adventure, and so when you're approaching a project, for a lot of us, this is going to be our first time doing a project, and it's just important to kind of go into it knowing that there's going to be some tension throughout the process when we talk about what do we want, what's our vision, and then also running it through the lens of what's feasible. So there's always going to be a creative tension in that experience, but it's just normal. So I want to just make sure that if you're going to take on a project, you don't feel or you don't get overly overwhelmed by it or some of the tension between the phases, because it's totally normal and it's what everyone experiences in a project.
So likely this whole process may have actually created some more questions in your head. So I just want to offer this up. If you have additional questions and you still want some more information about this, listen, we are happy to walk alongside of you as you're trying to figure this out. So there'll be a link somewhere down here. Feel free to click it, and we'll try to get in touch and we'll help you through it.
Yep.
I'm Dave Milo with Visioneering Studio, and this is
Danae Doherty.
Thanks for joining us.